I am very short, and like many kids, I was bullied in school, but because I was very short, a full head shorter than most of my peers, I was bullied in a way that made me really not want to go to school. I was in the bus and in the playground and, in the boys' room, and I didn't know the word humiliated, but I certainly was humiliated. I felt powerless and vulnerable. One of the older boys who had protected me, named Mickey Schwerner.
About 1,000,000 years ago, I studied at Cornell University, and whenever I wanted a break from studying or just to reflect, one of my favorite places to hang out was called Sage Chapel. Sage Chapel is a non-denominational church on the campus known for its stained glass windows, and one of the panes of windows was actually a memorial to three civil rights workers, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Mickey Schwerner. They were murdered during the Mississippi Freedom Summer in 1964. And Mickey Schwerner was a Cornell student, class, I think, of 1961. And I always felt going into that place this faint connection, even though it was a while back even then, to the civil rights movement, and proud that a student from this campus, among many other people, had such a profound impact on the course of justice in this country. So I was surprised when I heard Robert Reich mention the name Mickey Schwerner in this clip.
One of the older boys who had protected me, named Mickey Schwerner, Michael Schwerner, had in 1964 gone to Mississippi to register voters, and the real bullies of America, the Ku Klux Klan, murdered Mickey and two other civil rights workers. That was the beginning of a fundamental change in my views of the world. I began to see bullying all over. It wasn't just the schoolyard toughs bullying me. It was employers bullying employees, men bullying women, the stronger bullying the weaker, white supremacists bullying black people. I was beginning to see that inside America there was so much bullying. And then as inequality of income and wealth and political power began widening, that bullying intensified until we got Donald Trump is the bully of bullies. He is the bully in chief. He doesn't know how to act other than bullying.
As we see day by day in the headlines, this attempted rollback of a multiracial democracy in this country by a government of, in many cases, white nationalist bullies, it is helpful to refer back to the civil rights movement as one point in the attempt to make democracy real in this country. There's this documentary called American Experience that ran on PBS about Freedom Summer. Here's some footage of the sacrifices that people made to make democracy a little bit more real.
We hope to send into Mississippi this summer upwards of 1,000 students from all around the country who will engage in what we're calling freedom schools, community center programs, voter registration activity, and in general, a program designed to open up Mississippi to the country.
Part of the application process to be considered as part of the field staff was to write a letter of application. And this is part of the letter that I wrote. I wish to become an active participant rather than a passive onlooker. As my husband and I are in close agreement as to our philosophy and involvement in the civil rights struggle, I wish to work near him in whatever capacity I may be most useful. My hope is to someday pass on to the children we may have a world containing more respect for the dignity and worth of all men than that world which was willed to us.
Chaney and Schwerner quickly became friends. Together, they began laying the groundwork for the Mississippi Summer Project, which would bring hundreds of volunteers from colleges across the country to Mississippi to help Black citizens register to vote.
Mississippi public officials viewed it as an invasion. In fact, they called it out loud an invasion. They created statutes to basically harass, investigate, jail people who were involved in the civil rights movement. And in terms of the Ku Klux Klan, this was kind of their call to war.
The civil rights workers were also targeted by a state intelligence agency called the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission. The commission was formed in 1956 to combat integration. Under direct control of the governor, the agency treated civil rights activists as agitators who needed to be suppressed.
The Sovereignty Commission started spying on Mickey Schwerner and his wife, Rita. Those reports then went from the Sovereignty Commission to the police department in Meridian, Mississippi, about half of whom were members of the Ku Klux Klan.
Armed Klansmen came looking for Schwerner at Mount Zion Church, a black church outside of Philadelphia, Mississippi. When they didn't find him, they brutally assaulted churchgoers and burned Mount Zion to the ground.
What we know now from the Klan perspective is that burning the church was essentially a setup to bring the civil rights workers there.
The two men were unaware that earlier that spring, state leadership of Mississippi's White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan authorized the murder of Michael Schwerner. An agent for the Sovereignty Commission who had infiltrated the Freedom Summer training reported back that the so-called invasion of civil rights activists was starting. And by the time the trio reached Mississippi, state authorities, sheriffs, local police, and the Klan were lying in wait. On June 21st, Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman inspected the site of the burned church. A spy in the black community reported their presence to the Neshoba County Sheriff's Office. As they began their drive back to Meridian, they were arrested by Deputy Sheriff Cecil Price. The three were taken to the county jail at about 4 p.m. After holding them past nightfall, Deputy Sheriff Price released them from jail around 10:30 p.m. By then, 2 carloads of Klansmen were in position, watching for the blue station wagon. In coordination with state highway patrolmen waiting nearby, Price got into his squad car and led the Klansmen on a high-speed chase after the civil rights workers.
And I'm just wondering if people in this room understand, one, if people should be expected to get beaten, they should expect to spend in jail, and it may go beyond the summer when they're in jail, depending upon what the bond is, and that they should expect possibly somebody to get killed. And I was just wondering if there's any reaction to that, or has that been discussed, and is it fruitful at this first stage of the orientation to raise these questions so that people want to turn back, they can turn back now without going through this whole week, without understanding the tremendous dangers that are involved.
I'm Walter Cronkite. That dark-haired boy sitting in the middle of a group of civil rights workers was Andrew Goodman as he listened to a lecture at a civil rights seminar in Ohio last week. Tonight, Andrew Goodman and 2 companions, Mickey Schwerner and James Cheney, are the focus of a whole country's concern. They have been missing since Sunday in Mississippi, where they had gone as part of the Mississippi Freedom Summer Project, a project designed to draw national attention to the problem of Negro rights in that state.
The killers buried all 3 men 15 feet under an earthen dam and set the blue station wagon on fire.
The system, the Jim Crow system, had told me to stay in my place. It had told me that you have a role to play in Jim Crow society. Play it well. And I had played it well, along with, so did many other black people. But now Freedom Summer was telling us, you don't have to play that role anymore, folks. You are now on the path. It's going to be a tough struggle for children, for adults, for everybody involved in the movement. It's going to be tough. But that train has left the station, y'all.
If we get out of this situation, if we emerge from this moment in history, it's kind of like all the ways in the past. Democracy did not just happen. We never achieved it fully. The words on paper didn't make us what we are. It was the active work of people to defend and advance that vision. So when we have a government of people trying to tear down that vision, we can look back to our history, to moments like the Civil Rights Movement, to the Freedom Summer, draw some inspiration, and stand up to the bullies.